Hello, my name is Wyatt Hoover, and this is my discussion video for Dual Credit History on the Chisholm Trail. The Chisholm Trail was a major route out of Texas for livestock in the late 1800s. Although it was only used from 1867 to 1884, the Longhorn cattle driven north along it provided a steady source of income that helped the impoverished state of Texas recover from the Civil War. Another effect of the Chisholm Trail is youthful trail hands on Mustangs gave a Texas flavor to the entire range cattle industry of the Great Plains and made the cowboy an enduring folk hero. When the Civil War ended, the state's only political asset or potential assets were countless longhorns, for which no market was available. Missouri and Kansas had ended up closing their borders to Texas cattle in the 1850s because of the deadly Texas fever that they carried. In the East, there was a glaring demand for beef, and many men, among them Joseph G. McCoy of Illinois, sought ways of supplying it with Texas cattle. In the spring of 1867, he persuaded Kansas Pacific officials to lay a siding at the hamlet of Abilene, Kansas, on the edge of the quarantine area. He began building pens and loading facilities and sent word to Texas cowmen that a cattle market was available. That year, he shipped 35,000 head. The number doubled each year until 1871, when 600,000 head glutted the market. The first herd to follow the future Chisholm Trail to Abilene belonged to O.W. Wheeler and his partners, who in 1867 bought 2,400 steers in San Antonio. They planned to winter them on the plains and then trail them on to California. At the North Canadian River in Indian Territory, they saw wagon tracks and followed them. The tracks were made by Scott Cherokee Jesse Chisholm, whom this is a picture of. Jesse Chisholm in 1864 began hauling trade goods to Indian camps about 220 miles south of his post near modern Wichita. At first, the route was merely referred to as the Trail, the Kansas Trail, the Abilene Trail, or McCoy's Trail. Though it was originally applied only to the trail north of the Red River, Texas cowmen soon ended up giving the trail Chisholm's name to the entire trail from the Rio Grande to the central Kansas. The earliest known references to the Chisholm Trail in print were in the Kansas Daily Commonwealth of May 27th and October 11th of 1870. On April 28th of 1874, the Denison, Texas Daily News, mentioned cattle going up the famous Chisholm Trail. These herds follow the old Shawnee Trail by way of San Antonio, Austin, and Waco, where the trails then split. The Chisholm Trail ended up continuing on to Fort Worth, then passed east of Decatur to the crossing at Red River Station. From Fort Worth to Newton, Kansas, U.S. Highway 81 follows the Chisholm Trail. It was, as Weingard observed, like a tree. The roots were the feeder trails from South Texas. The trunk was the main route up from San Antonio across Indian Territory, and the branches were extensions to various railheads in Kansas. Between 1871, when Abilene ceased to be a cattle market, and 1884, the trail might end at Ellsworth, Junction City, Newton, Wichita, or Caldwell. Therefore, the trail is very, very varied in its ending points and its traveling. The Western Trail, by way of Fort Griffin and Doan's Store, ended at Dodge City. And here is a picture of the Chisholm Trail and the different places it would start and the different things it would end up being called. The cattle on the Chisholm Trail did not follow a clearly defined trail except at river crossings. When dozens of herds were moving north, it was necessary to spread them out to find grass. The animals were allowed to graze along for 10 to 12 miles a day and never pushed except to reach water. Cattle that ate and drank their fill were unlikely to stampede. Therefore, feeding and drinking and having full cattle was very important. When conditions were favorable, some longhorns actually ended up gaining weight on the trail. After trailing techniques were perfected, a trail boss, 10 cowboys, a cook, and a horse wrangler could end up trailing 2,500 cattle 3 months for 60 to 65 cents a head. This was much cheaper than shipping by rail. The Chisholm Trail led to the new professions of trailing contractor. A few different large ranchers, such as Captain Richard King and Abel Shanghai Pierce, delivered their own stock, but trailing contractors handled the vast majority of herds. Among them were John T. Lytle and his partners, who trailed about 600,000 head. Others were George W. Slaughter and Sons, Snyder Brothers, Blocker Brothers, and Pryor Brothers. In 1884, Pryor Brothers contracted to deliver 4,500 head, or 45,000 head, sending them in 15 separate herds for a net profit of $20,000. After the Plains tribes were subdued and the buffalo decimated, ranches sprung up all over the plains. Most ended up stocked with Texas Longhorns and manned by Texas cowboys. And this is a picture of what a cattle drive would usually look like, or that's just more of a herd of cattle. Most of these ranches were stocked with Texas Longhorns from the Chisholm Trail and ended up manned by Texas cowboys who came up on the Chisholm Trail. Raising cattle on open range and free grass attracted investments from the East and abroad in partnerships such as that of Charles Goodnight and Irish financier John Adair, or in ranching syndicates such as the Scottish Prairie Land and Cattle Company and the Matador Land and Cattle Company. Texas tried to outlaw alien land ownership but ended up failing. The XIT Ranch arose when the Texas legislature granted the Capital Syndicate of Chicago 3 million acres for building a new capital. The Chisholm Trail was finally closed by the invention of barbed wire, which also ended open rein. And in 1885, the Kansas Quarantine Law also helped to end it. By 1884, which was its last year, it was only open as far as Caldwell in southern Kansas. In its brief existence, it had been followed by more than 5 million cattle and 1 million Mustangs. Thank you. That's my speech on the Chisholm Trail. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed.